psychic energy, like the psychological sense of being broken, is real. Passion is merely psychic energy. It's the thing that makes you enthusiastic enough to fight through all the boredom and to keep going. We are very much living in the weak man moment of history. Your entire life is controlled by your biology. You will never understand spirituality until you understand biology. Beliefs and values are the thing that create the matrix that you live inside of, plus biology. Given the wiring of the human brain, we are far more likely to believe something negative about us. We are a hungry species. There is no action you can take that will make you not want more. The curse is always wanting to do more and be more and to have more, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical. That's the trap. So if I know there's no having that will ever fill this hole in my soul, the only thing that fills it is pursuit. But the real thing, like the secret thing I keep in my back pocket is...
Where do you see hallmarks that we are currently getting more entrenched into the matrix in certain ways, but then also simultaneously like the veil is lifting on the matrix in some way? Because I'm sure both are kind of playing out right now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting insight that we live at a fascinating intersection of being able to be more manipulated, and I will define the matrix in a second, being more manipulated and yet having more off-ramps out to see how the world really works. Okay, so what is the matrix? The matrix is what I call your frame of reference. So while the world may not literally be a simulation, I assure you that your experience of the world is. It is a simulation created by your brain. And once people understand that I can change how you perceive the world simply by giving you a drug, right? So I could give you ayahuasca, I could give you ketamine, I could give you really caffeine, nicotine, and it will change fundamentally how you interface with the world. Okay, for me, that was a huge breakthrough because once I understood, oh, wait a second, you can make mild changes to my neurochemistry and it's going to radically alter my experience of what is quote unquote real, then I am for sure trapped inside of a simulation created by my own mind. Okay, well, that can either work for me or against me. But knowing that it is true allowed me to go, okay, well, if what I live inside is not a factual representation of the real world, just to give you an idea, factual real world is the following. You only see 0.0035% of the available electromagnetic spectrum. So what is there to be seen is massive, and what you can actually perceive is very, very small. And so you can think of that as evolution has handed you rules of thumb, shorthand for you to navigate the world. It's not making any attempt to be accurate to what's there. It's just trying to make an attempt to give you something that allows you to stay alive long enough to have kids that have kids. Cool. But if I'm steering by all of these shorthands, then I need to understand that some may be optimized to the world today and others are not. The easiest one is, why are so many people obese? Because we were optimized from the perspective of food is hard to find. And once you live in an environment where food is not hard to find anymore, now all of a sudden, all of those shorthand algorithms that are running in your brain that say when you find something that is high in fat and sugar, eat as much of it as you possibly can, that starts to go very awry when you have biology that's designed where that stuff's going to be very, very hard to find. Okay, so I'm living in a simulation made by my own brain, my biology. We call that the Matrix just because the movie The Matrix is an extraordinary metaphor for the human condition in that you're not seeing what's real, you're just seeing this approximation. That approximation tricks you into believing that it is real, and all of the problems in your life stem from you have an emotion triggered by this shorthand, you believe that the emotion is probably justified is the right word, and because you believe that any emotion you feel is a justified emotion, you react accordingly. So if something makes you mad, you lash out. If something makes you sad, you pull back. And the reality is that I think people should steer by their goals. And so this gets into, we live in a time where you have more off-ramps out of the matrix. The problem is because most people don't even realize that they're in a matrix, they just get algorithmically looped by social media or whatever into feelings. And so algorithms drag them deeper into feelings. Feelings feel ever more justified. And now people just live completely in their feels. And feelings do not care about whether or not you're moving towards your goals. They only care about whether you're going to survive long enough to have kids that have kids. So what I always want people to do is say, what is your goal? Just lay it out. Say it in a single sentence. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Then, of all the things that you do and believe, ask, do these things move me towards that goal, yes or no? Now, that is not me saying that there is no truth. That is me saying that truth is ridiculously hard to discover without experimentation and knowing what, in business we call them KPIs, key performance indicator. What key performance indicator are you expecting to move when you do XYZ thing? And when you do XYZ thing, did you actually get closer to your goal? If you did, then odds are that you're getting closer to ground truth. And if you didn't, odds are that your belief is far away from ground truth. And that's why you were not able to predict the outcome of your behaviors. So the quickest way to know whether you're getting close, again, I don't expect anybody to actually get to ground truth, but if you're getting closer, your ability to predict the outcome of your actions will go up. If you're getting farther away, your ability to predict the outcomes of your actions will go down. And just to really wind your audience up for a second, I will give you one of the most basic. So if you assume that men and women are the same, your prediction engine is going to break and you're going to be very confused by your relationships. If you go, oh, men and women are fundamentally and irrevocably different and different in mappable, knowable ways, now all of a sudden I can understand how my wife is going to react to my behaviors in a way that has way more predictive validity than if I assume she's like me and she's going to respond how I would respond to that stimulus, because it will be very, very different. That obviously became controversial somewhere a few years ago, but is really sort of the most basic and profound way where people can see, oh, there's something broken in my ability to predict. And then if you really want to get into deep waters, business becomes the ultimate expression of that. The world is so complicated. And to try to win in business, which is like the ultimate expression of psychology, now you run into your ability to really navigate incredibly deep complexities. And that's where people will find out real fast how close to ground truth they are.
So the interesting thing about that is when you're looking at truth, there's almost this concept of coherence based on your predictive analysis. And it's always going to be subjective. And as close as you can possibly get is to analyze your own coherence to that predictive analysis that you initially laid out. Now, the interesting thing is it doesn't just have to be career, but many of us are struggling to live into our truth. And there's this particular framework of yours, which I think it's called the 1,000-door model that you refer to. There's like 1,000 doors. And this was really tough. And I'm just going to take a quick moment for me, because when I was leaving corporate, the thing that kept me stuck in place was this fear that I embodied, Tom, which was, this was my one opportunity. It was pummeled into me my entire life that this was my one opportunity. All my education, all my chips had landed into this one basket for me to go and harness this one particular opportunity. Now, no one had prepared me for actually when I was going to disconnect. My problem wasn't going to be, what to do next. My problem was actually going to be, holy cow, there's so many things that I could be actually doing. And learning to actually find my way forward through that was actually the biggest challenge. So this idea around opportunity, I'd love you to take a quick moment to just explain to us, the importance of learning to shut 99 doors, and how do you even begin to commence the process of understanding that, the relationship with opportunity that an individual has, and then shutting the doors as well?
Yeah, so I think most people are not going to run into a dearth of opportunities. I think most people are going to find there are too many things that they want to do and they just don't know which one. The key to that is understanding if you want to live a life of passion, it is not an archaeological dig inside of your soul to find that thing that's always been there your whole life and it was just waiting for you to discover it. That is not how the human animal works. That's why Steve Jobs would not have 10,000 years ago lamented his life because technology was not such that he could create the iPhone, he would have been somebody that expressed himself in the ways of whatever was on offer at those days. But he almost certainly would have been at the bleeding edge of technology for whatever technology was at that time, because he has that creative impulse. He has that draw to the new, to the revolutionary. So I want people to understand that passion is an architectural build. So you're going to decide what's going to be your passion, and you're going to walk down the path of building that. And so because when I tell people that, they end up going, but there are so many things that I want to do. And that's when I will tell people, yes, life is like standing in a room with 1,000 doors, and your job is to close 999 of them. And most people won't be able to do it. And most people live lives of frustration. The human animal is not, quote unquote, meant for glory. That's an option. It is a path before you if you've got the fortitude to actually go down that path and be decisive and make decisions and be fearless in the face of failure and accept that other people are going to laugh at you because you are going to embarrass yourself. But that on a long enough timeline, you can gather enough skills that allow you to outperform other people. Like, that's basically life. And if you understand that passion must be a reciprocal relationship with other human beings, then you're going to get somewhere. So what I mean by that is passion looks like this. It starts out as an area of interest that you decide you're going to explore and see if it can become a passion. And that exploration looks like the more you engage with it, does it become more or less fascinating? Because you're going to run into people that say, like, I used to study magic, and I was more intrigued by magic and magicians when I realized, oh, this is all just somebody practicing so much, the most subtle little movement, the ability to control where you look at a given time and to be able to do something with their hands that you don't notice, that it took them so long and so much time to do that one simple thing. You would sooner believe that they have access to another dimension than that they just worked that hard. That to me is awesome. And so I found that thrilling. So when I pursue something, one of two things happens. Either I'm like, oh man, the more I find out about this thing, I'm actually into this even more. Or I'm like, yeah, like I get now how some people look at magic, and when you see how the sausage is made, it becomes less interesting. So take music. The more I engage with music, the more I was like, like figuring out musical theory and all that stuff, like it just doesn't speak to me enough to continue down this path. But for some people, as soon as they realize, oh my gosh, this is all mathematically related, like they get more into it. Cool. So you pursue that thing, you find out if it turns into a fascination, or if you're like, yeah, I don't want to know how this one's made. Cool. The one that turns into a fascination, that becomes a candidate for passion. And the way it becomes a candidate for passion is you're now that it's a fascination, you're going to go down the very boring, arduous road of actually getting so good at that thing that you can deliver value to somebody else's life. Now, once you're in that, you've got an opportunity that this becomes a passion. So a passion looks like this thing that I'm fascinated in, I'm now getting good at it. I'm doing the boring, hard work of pushing past my limitations and getting to the point, let's just make it about music, where not only can I sort of goof around on the guitar, but I can pick up a guitar and make people feel an emotion that they want to feel. And so now people go, oh my God, that was amazing. And so now I get positive reinforcement. I am a social creature. And so the right way to think about yourself is you are both the shout and the echo. Now, what I mean by that is you're the thing that you do, and you're what the world tells you about the thing that you do. And if you do a thing and the world universally tells you you're horrible, I hate everything about this, you will stop. I mean, that is the mechanism by which we get people to stop doing things we don't want them to do. If, on the other hand, you do a thing and the world's like, yo, that is incredible, even if it's just a small portion of the world, because anybody with YouTube comments knows it's not going to be universally positive. But you get that cadre of people that are like, man, you're really like, this really means a lot to me. You've changed my life. You have no idea. And so that then is like, ooh, I want to get better at this. Now you're in this really powerful loop of the better I get, the more I'm able to positively impact somebody's life, which makes me want to get better, which then allows me to impact their life more, which makes me want to get better, which impacts their life more. And so now you're in a virtuous cycle. And so that ultimately is what everybody's looking for. Now, people want that process to be magical when in reality, like everything in life, it is mechanistic. It is something that you build, you get very conscious, very intentional.
Woo! Inspired Soul, thank you so much to all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge that everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and your support. Now, to all of you that haven't yet subscribed, you can easily do so just by taking a moment. There's a button below the subscribe button. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. As I'm saying the word subscribe, it's lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution as well. Please take a moment, hit the button, hit the bell notification icon, and continue to champion love, positivity, and wisdom with us around the world through your subscription. Thank you so much for your love and support. And with that, back to Tom in today's episode.
Yes, I could go down many of these doors. And to your question about how do you shut those doors? Well, first you start by shutting all the ones that you're just not interested in. So yes, I could go do that. Like I was once told that I should be a lawyer. I have no interest in that whatsoever. So that door just gets shut, not because I don't have the capability, because I don't have the interest. Then you're going to shut the next set of doors. You walk through the door for a minute. And if you have to blindly select randomly, literally put them in a hat and just draw out, and I'm going to walk through that door. Now, if when you walk through that door, you're like, this isn't very fun. Cool, come back, draw another one out of the hat. Or just prioritize them based on how interested you are. So I have been able to shut 997 of my doors, but I cannot bring myself to close 2 additional doors. Fair enough. And my life is in some ways better because I really have relentlessly narrowed my life down to only 3 things. But in some ways, my life is worse because I diffuse my energy, which we all have a limited amount of energy, over 3 things. Cool. So I'm very aware that I'm doing that. I'm very aware that that is true. And I'm very aware that I generated all my wealth in a period where I focused on exactly one thing. So, hey, you should be aware of both of those truths. So now by saying, okay, these are the ones that I don't want to pursue for whatever reason. And then here are the ones that became a true passion loop where I was able to get so good that I could add value to people's lives. And so now I live in those 3 loops. The hard reality is that some people have a neurochemical makeup such that they only like the beginning. Now, these people tend to fall in love easily and fall out of love easily. They start a business only to quit and start the next thing. They start a new job only to reboot and go into another industry. And look, if you want to pursue those short-term highs, who am I to judge? But just know that that's not going to add up to much. You won't be able to get any of the momentum going. It's a whole concept called VMG, velocity made good. We can go into it if you want. I am not going to fractal down that unless you push me on it. But if you want to capture momentum in your life, then you have to understand the more you narrow your focus, the better off you're going to be. But not necessarily from a, I enjoy my day today, but certainly from a, I'm able to impact people more. I'm able to generate revenue off of this thing. That really is going to require a tremendous amount of focus. Now, the one idea that I really want people to embrace, because this will eliminate a lot of anxiety, nobody knows what they're doing. So anybody that has clear direction in their life, odds are they've walked through a lot of doors and they just came up with a reason to close that door and move on. And they might be, in the back of their mind, like, oh man, I really would love to do that thing. But they just keep moving forward because they know they can be anything they want, but not everything. Other times, people just know I'm going to go in, and the KPI that I'm after, for instance, is I want to have the maximum impact on people, and the KPI that I will use to determine that is revenue. Okay, cool. And this is, people probably don't use those words, but this is somebody in their career, right? I want to go as high as I can in my career doing something I love, helping people, but I really want to rise to the top of my field. And there's a whole host of reasons why humans, especially men, are incentivized to do that. But nonetheless, that becomes the way in which they judge their life. And so that shuts a lot of doors, right? So when I was young, I was like, am I going to be a poet or am I going to be a filmmaker? And I was like, I know exactly 0 multi-million-dollar poets, but there are a lot of very wealthy filmmakers. So cool. Just based on that alone, I'm going to go down the road of being a filmmaker. So that's just me being honest with things that motivate and excite me. So I'm not asking anybody else to live my life. I'm just saying these were ways that I shut doors. And once people have a method of understanding, okay, none of this is ever going to seem right in the beginning. I need to go experience it. I can always come back if I don't like that thing. I can diffuse my energy over as many doors as I want, but the more doors I go through, the less effective I will be at any one of those doors. That just is true. You can tell yourself the lie that these things all reinforce each other. The honest answer is they don't, because you have a finite amount of time. And if you just went down the road of doing one thing, you'd be better. But you can come up levels. So for instance, I no longer have any desire to direct a feature film, but I do want to own the studio. So that became my way of like, I want to touch a lot of stories at one time. I don't want to spend 2 years on one story. So what do I have to do? I have to go up a level. But by going up a level, it means I'm not the person sitting at the keyboard writing it. I'm not the person on set working with the actors. So I had to accept that I'm giving up those things in order to come up a level. And so I could have come up a level and gone, no, actually, I don't like this and I want to go back. So this is Steve Jobs versus Steve Wozniak. They found Apple at the same time. Steve Jobs keeps going up a level until he reaches the CEO. And Wozniak says, forever, I want to be, I think he called himself a mid-level engineer because he wanted to be in the guts of the machine. Cool. They both play out their lives. Obviously, one got a lot richer than the other, but maybe Wozniak was happier. That could still be true. So people just need to understand the KPI that they're really going to judge themselves against.
Storytelling seems to be a really profound thread in your system. I'd love to find out what those 3 doors that you've kept open are, because I wonder if actually that thread of storytelling can actually be woven through all 3 of them.
It's a useful tool, but it isn't the day-to-day reality. So the 3 doors are, I am a teacher. So I have a university where I teach people business. I am a game developer. So I'm literally making a video game. That is the most direct way that I do my storytelling. And then the third one is being an online personality. So I have ideas that I want to engage with and share, and I just cannot stop myself from spending time learning, researching, and talking about this stuff, as evidenced by the fact that I'm here. So you can say that obviously this is also teaching, yes, and it does tap into that neuron. But if I really just wanted to make the most of my life as a teacher, I would focus way more on spending my time only talking about the subjects that I actively teach. And so that would be only going on business podcasts, but I don't limit myself in that way, for instance. But if I did, my brand would be a lot clearer. I would generate more revenue. I just wouldn't be as fulfilled as a human. But that algorithm runs in my brain a lot, and I constantly reevaluate whether that's the right play for where I'm at in my life today. So yeah, those are the 3.
There's also, you have there's a parallel reality somewhere out there where you're a writer traveling the world, doing your thing, just enjoying that. Now, I feel into your parallel reality and I'm like, your option B is actually quite a dope option A for some people. But also you went further to sort of suggest that having an option B that is kind of robust gives you plenty of flex to play when it comes to your option A. Can you describe just how useful it has to have those options for the mental bandwidth to go? Because it can be so serious when you're shutting doors and then opening doors feeling like they're going to be your one and only be all and end all.
Well, so the way that I think about this is I want to make sure that I never become attached to the things that I have. So I don't want to be attached to, oh, look how many millions of views that I get every month. I don't want to be attached to that. I don't want to be attached to, I have a business and it generates millions of dollars. I don't want to be attached to that. I've generated tremendous wealth in my life. I don't want to be attached to that. But the one thing I know I cannot let go of is a need for meaning and purpose. So I need a way to express myself that feels like I'm contributing something to the world. That just goes back to being a social creature. You have that algorithm running in the back of your mind. There is no escaping it. Every human is subject to that law, that if you do not contribute to the group, you will feel a profound sense of dis-ease. So whenever I think, I could stop working at any time, or if I lost everything, I would be fine, I always run into, well, would you? What would be the thing that you do? How do you fill that time? How do you deliver meaning and purpose to the world in a way that lights you on fire? Because I could go to a soup kitchen and help other people, but I know that that wouldn't fulfill me. So the question is, okay, what would I do in that situation? And I happen to know through a quirk of how I am wired that I can get so lost inside of a story that I'm creating that is a very pleasurable activity. And the only thing that really requires is some sort of safe space where I can modulate the temperature such that I am not uncomfortable and that I can create in that zone. Because that's what I was pursuing at the beginning of my, in my, call it early 20s. And so I got a profound glimpse into that alternate reality that I not only could have pursued, that I could still pursue in the future. I would have meaning and purpose. I would have a thing that I could do and love and get into that loop of passion. And so there is a sense of, I can relax over that because I know what I would do if I lost everything, like what would be the next step. But I find that most people are probably better off saying they don't have that pull of like, well, there's this other thing and would I be better off? So I think that can actually drive people really crazy. And if they could have a healthy relationship with this is the path that I'm on, that's probably better. And that if people need that thing to keep in their back pocket, is this universal? This is not universal, but now we get into how much does intellect matter? But the real thing, like the secret thing I keep in my back pocket is monk-style detachment, to where I realize that even my pursuit of fulfillment is a trap, and that if you really, really want that exit ramp, you've got to be able to get to the point where you don't want anything other than exactly where you are in that moment. Now, I do not claim to have achieved that, but I remind myself that it is something that I could structure my life around. Should I ever find myself in significant emotional distress where I'm like, life is no longer worth living, then I would play that card because I know that's a trick.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. That's a profound depth there, because the desire to be desireless is the ultimate desire in many ways. And it's this full-on koan space to be in, to shed that. But it's easy. That's a very easy sentence to say. But when you actually sit with something like that, it's infinitely hard to program in, given that even the universe, the way that it's playing itself out, there's a desire for it to witness itself, right? To have this experience that is human. Interestingly, even as your fascination of story and character and purpose and meaning, when those are all themes that are like like so attached to storytelling and story. Do you see yourself living out a story yourself as a being and kind of reflect on what is the overarching theme / moral, like the character that's being built through Tom Bilyeu, the story?
No. I think that it is very easy to tell a story about one's life, but I don't view my life as a story. I see theme and story merely as a way for humans to pass down culture such that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And that story becomes the way with our limited senses to be able to grasp and transmit very complex ideas. So I think it's really incredible that the human brain has evolved to use story in such a profound way that we've literally optimized our brain to see the world from the perspective of a story. But I don't, in the practice of my life, I don't feel like I'm living a story. Now, when I go to communicate it to other people, obviously I translate it into a story, but that's not my experience.
Some people would argue that potentially at this juncture, hearing you speak about detachment comes from a place of the privilege of having achieved all the things that you've wanted to achieve. How do you instill lessons like this in individuals that haven't had the same life experiences that you have had?
Well, so that would be a fundamental misunderstanding of what actual monk level detachment is. Monk level detachment is, I could starve to death and that would be fine. It just is what it is. And the ability to separate pain from suffering is a really fascinating part of the human mind. Again, I am not saying that I have achieved that. I have not. And so like anybody, if I found myself out on the street, I'd be like, well, this really sucks. But I know that that is a trick that my mind is playing on me. I don't know how deep and philosophical we want to get here, and I do not want anybody to lose sight of the fact I am very grounded in the same reality that they are all grounded in, for better or worse. However, I find it very fascinating that we are having a biological experience, and I do not fool myself that my pain and suffering is born of biology, which is these evolutionary destinations, or at least sort of transient pass-through moments, where to keep me alive long enough to have kids that have kids, my brain is a certain way. And the very fact that pain and suffering are two different regions of the brain that you can turn off selectively is utterly fascinating. So really mild case of this, I was in New York just a couple days ago, and we ended up walking quite a distance. And it was very cold. And my wife was worried that, long story why, she wanted to walk, I didn't, but we ended up walking, and she was like, oh, I hope that this doesn't end up being like super lame for you, because I don't want you to have a bad time just because I want to do this thing. And I was like, no, this is perfect. This gives me a chance to detach suffering from pain, because she was dressed more warmly than I was. So I was like, look, I am going to be cold, and that is going to give me a pain signal, but I'm not going to suffer at all. And so we can take as much time as we want. This is good practice to remind myself that these two things are separate. And it's utterly fascinating, man. It really works. So there are limits. Of course, if I was being tortured, I would be freaking out and I would be in all kinds of suffering. And I'm sure I would come to the conclusion that, hey, it works for monks and I'm not there yet. But nonetheless, keeping that in my back pocket to know that if my life ever got to the point where I'm like, ooh, I don't know that this is worth it, then to earn my own respect, I would play that final card.
Talking about, thank you for delineating that out. I think that's really profound. Interestingly, you interview a lot of different people. I'd love to get your take on where we are right now as collectively as a society to some degree as well, because I've heard, this was, I'm sure it's a common colloquial, but I heard it first said by you, which was, and I'll let you say it actually, tough times create good men, so on and so forth, and then eventually we end up with weak times. Can you give us that, and then tell us where you think we might be in the whole stage of everything?
Yeah. So, okay, this is very much not something I came up with, but I don't know who did. So we're both reaching into ether with this amazing quote. So it goes, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and then you loop back around. We are very much living in the weak man moment of history. So we had 70 years of unprecedented peace and prosperity in the West. Obviously, this is not global, but in the West, we just had an unprecedented run post-World War II. Really been incredible. You could, number go up in the stock market with minor blips. In the Western world, education rates rising, people yanked out of poverty. I mean, just like every metric you could want to see. And even globally, the amount that we've reduced poverty is unbelievable. I mean, just absolutely unbelievable. I don't want to be blind to the fact that there are still people suffering and there's wars happening right now. But oh my Lord, when you really step back and look at history, bro, like if you want to get into history, like some really dark, evil things have happened in history. We're just outside of that, certainly regionally in the West, but even at a global scale, way better than it's ever been. So that is inevitably going to create people that are soft. And you're getting what people would call luxury beliefs now, where it's like, yeah, you can believe that when the world is safe and stable, but you're not going to be happy with the outcome of that when your country gets invaded. And I doubt very much that your audience is into anything political, but you can really see the bifurcation in politics. And so there really is a fascinating evolutionary divide between the left and the right that I think people would be very wise to understand. So if you look at creating a creature that is able to, more than any other creature on planet Earth, is able to cooperate in extremely large groups flexibly. That's the important part. Extremely large groups flexibly, right? So ants, extremely large groups, not flexibly. They've got a role, they do the role, that's it. And so we're able to use story and things to unite us, to work in these incredibly large groups. But the way that we get there is very different than anything that you're going to see anywhere else in the animal kingdom. And so people can get themselves in trouble if they don't understand the nature of the human mind in that. If you understand that for us to come together in these large groups, we have to have the storytelling, but we also have to have a tension between the left and the right. And so the tension looks like this. On the left, you've got the no man left behind, right? Compassion. We want to make sure that everybody's okay. The problem is game theory tells you that if you're always looking out for the other person, you're going to get something called a free rider. And so this is known as the free rider problem. And that's where the right comes in. And the right is about personal responsibility. And either one of them alone becomes pathological. And so what we've seen as we get into weak times is the pathological leaning to the left, where it's all compassion. It's don't chastise people for doing drugs, like just make sure that they have clean needles. That's just deranging. So you need the right to step in and say, hold on, people need to take personal responsibility. People need to get off drugs. You're not going to be able to contribute to the group if you're over here doing drugs and you're expecting us to give you money and resources and all of that. Like, that's crazy. So, but the right on its own becomes pathological, becomes totalitarian. So you need this balance in the friction between the left and the right. And what you see, unfortunately, is people on the left are thinking everybody on the right's evil, and the people on the right think everybody on the left is evil. And so now you get these warring factions as the tribes move farther and farther apart. And so getting people to understand that it's really the friction that makes this work becomes incredibly important. And that's what's missing in this moment. But yes, very much born out of the good times make weak men moment, because you can afford to say, no, like, just make sure they have clean needles. But you can't afford that. You know, you go back 200 years, man, we're like fighting for survival.
Your episode with Ray Dalio saying the US is 40% likely at civil war was really interesting to feel into.
That number keeps going up. I think at last check, he put it at 50%. So we'll see, because at least the election was as close to a landslide election as you're going to get right now. So people are saying, look, we have a clear majority that believe we need to go in this new direction. But the rubber's going to meet the road. Trump isn't going to live up to all of the things that he said because nobody is going to. And then we'll see what people do. They're going to have some kind of reaction to it. But the hope is that we can get consensus, that we can actually make things better. This is where KPIs come in. If they make a bunch of changes, but it doesn't impact people's lives economically, then it's all going to be for naught, because people are in a good mood if they're going to make more money in a year than they are today, and they're in a really good mood if that's true, and they believe that their kids will make even more money when they're in their 20s than they did when they were in their 20s. And right now, up until now, those have been broken. And so you get people really up in arms, but they don't necessarily understand why they're up in arms. And trust me when I say we could do a full 3-hour podcast just on why people end up economically in that position. But again, going to this whole weak men make hard times is when you think that you can just print money, and that's somehow going to end poverty, you end up in a really deranged situation. There's a great analogy that I heard. I think it was Balaji Srinivasan that said this. If not, somebody check me in the comments. But the quote was, if printing money cured poverty, then printing diplomas would cure ignorance. And the reality is you have to earn the creation of money, which most people do not understand how that works, but you have to earn the creation of money through productivity. And then you have to earn knowledge by working and gaining that knowledge and actually becoming useful at something. And so we can no more print money, print buying power, than we can print knowledge like that.
Bring it back to the individual. You have this very interesting insight whereby personally you found, because we're talking about some anxiety provoking things for some individuals, and the level of self-awareness that you carry, I have found quite inspirational for myself following your show over the years. But you've gone to highlight that it's actually a bit of a double-edged sword, well, in your experience as well, in that when you were younger, you weren't that self-aware and you weren't anxious either. Then you grew up and you've gone through quite the transformation. I feel like Tom Bilyeu every couple of years is someone different, actually.
If only you knew how true that is. Yeah.
Well, I do. I follow you. And I've seen the evolutions, the inspired evolutions. But yeah, then you've also said that there are challenges accompanied to self-awareness as well, which is interesting because especially from, I think my audience is, we're quite avid self-aware, like proponents of self-awareness.
Yeah, because you know how useful it is. So it's one of those, I wouldn't trade it, but I would certainly dial it down. If I had a knob and could dial my anxiety down to the point where it's like, okay, I'm taking this seriously, and so I'm putting in the time and the energy, but it's not something that becomes a sort of full-time distraction, I would certainly do that. But yes, I think anxiety comes from understanding what things have real stakes, from knowing if I get this right, it leads to something better than if I get it wrong. And so you get these sort of elevated moments where something really matters. And then as you begin to imagine that future and one is better and one is worse, which actually is true, that becomes hard. And then if you are good at seeing yourself through other people's eyes, then yeah, it gets harder to just be relaxed and be yourself. And so the times where I feel that I am most effective, unfortunately, are the times where I literally forget myself, what most people will call a flow state. Part of what makes a flow state work is you're just completely unaware of the doer doing the thing. You're just doing the thing. It's one of the reasons I like video games so much is you can get into a real flow state and you forget yourself. You're just there in the moment, doing the thing in the competition. It's truly glorious. And so the moments where I can get into that kind of rhythm, I always hunger for that. But yes, I am well aware that I don't get trapped by my own frame of reference because I don't trust my emotions, because I am highly self-aware and can actually articulate to myself why I'm having an emotion. And I can do that even when it reveals something petty or ugly about myself. That's very useful, but it does not give me an elevated sense of myself. It gives me a very realistic sense of myself. And unfortunately, when you look at people who are depressed, they have the most accurate vision of themselves. Meaning, if you ask them to rate themselves on a bunch of different criteria and ask other people who know them to rate them on that criteria, The depressed person will have a ranking that matches what other people think about them. A person who's in really good spirits, theirs is completely divorced from what other people think about them. So thankfully, I am not depressed. I'm not prone to depression as a neurological state, but I am very much prone to anxiety, which while I don't think my thing may manifest as depression if I believe that I were hopelessly trapped. In fact, that is a true statement now that I think about it. But because in my early 20s, I realized I wasn't trapped, that I could get better, it shifted away from being a depressive state to being an anxious state. So at least I don't feel trapped, but I understand the high consequences of getting something right or getting it wrong.
Inspired soul, what are your biggest takeaways from today's conversation with Tom? For me, pointing our ambitions to outcomes and places such as peace, and acknowledging and honoring the pursuit rather than the outcomes has been a really profound place to sit in. What are your biggest takeaways from today's conversation? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you have any questions of Tom of your own, he said he'll be present in the comments with us, touchwood, to the best of his ability. So you might actually get your questions answered. Feel free to leave those comments below. With that, back to Tom and today's episode. Interestingly, you've also got some really interesting mindset pieces tucked around in there as well. You wrote something which is, I think, for your audience was a bit controversial, but for ours, I think we're more versed in this, which is like the supreme ownership to some degree. Like you're manifesting, creating your reality at any given time. If you go out and you end up potentially getting hit by a car, some part of you called that in. And I remember you got roasted hella hard for sharing that. And I didn't want to roast you again, but I think there's this point where I'd love to get your thoughts on mindset, because at a certain point, it seems like mindset even taps out and it's at its frontier, spills into spirituality, or maybe that's just my worldview. Your worldview on that. And then if you can help us unpack, just what you mean by, if you step out in front of a car and get hit, some part of you created that. What is that? Is that metaphysical in your interpretation?
Not at all. So I don't believe that you can think something into existence. I believe, though, that everything is downstream of your belief. So you have to believe it in order for you to take the actions that will be required to make that thing a real thing. And so if I could get people to understand, look, believing is very important. So anybody that tells you what you believe, it matters a lot, they are correct, but they are only correct in as much as all of your actions will follow what you believe. And so if you believe you can't do something, you won't even take the actions, or you'll take them half-hearted because you think, well, this isn't going to lead to anything. And so if you were right, then why would you put the time and energy into it? All right, the thing that got me roasted was, to this day, I stand by it. It is the best piece of advice that I have to offer anybody, which is your life is an exact reflection of your choices. If you get hit by a drunk driver, that's your fault. Now, people get real twisted over the word fault. So let me say it another way, which hopefully will de-escalate, even though I just have it in my personality to want to say things in the most provocative way possible. And the more people get annoyed at me, the more I want to say it in the hardcore way. But I will try to be a good boy and say, this is the same thing said a different way. If you do something different, you can get a different outcome. So if I'm in a car and I get hit by a drunk driver, I go, well, yeah, I chose to get in a car. I knew how dangerous it was. And the example that I gave was, let's say you pull up to a light, there's a car in front of you, a car to your left, a car to your right, but you still pull up into what ends up being a kill box. And so now, because I can't go forward, I can't go left, can't go right, I'm just trapped. And if I look in the mirror and I see this car barreling at me and I go to honk my horn and I realize my car's died, my horn's not working, well, am I going to blame the manufacturer of the vehicle, or am I going to say I didn't take responsibility for making sure that my car was working as it should? Now, here is the most insidious thing about excuses. They are valid. So getting hit by a drunk driver, even if I go to the insurance company and I say, this isn't my fault, this is a drunk driver, the insurance company is going to go, yeah, we agree. If I go, my car died, this isn't my fault, it's a brand new car, this is the manufacturer. The manufacturer is going to go, yeah, we agree. And I'm just saying that doesn't help me at all. And so if I take these very valid excuses, I will not be able to steer my life where I want it to go because I've given my power away. I'm saying there's nothing different I could have done. It's the car manufacturer. It's the guy that was drinking. It's the whatever. All very valid, all very real reasons. My parents don't have money. People don't want people that look like me to succeed. All things that I've really heard. And it's like, yes, those things will make things harder. But as Kobe Bryant says, booze don't block dunks. You can get so good at something that people cannot stop you from succeeding. And so it literally doesn't matter. You really can get just unstoppably good at something. And I would highly encourage people, instead of taking the very valid excuses, instead of doing that, to figure out what different thing you could do or could have done to yield a different result, so the next time you will act in a way that gives you the outcome that you desire.
Rewiring beliefs, because the interesting thing is you said just believing something doesn't really reinforce it until you see a different result. But then also there's a requirement there for you to do something different to demonstrate to yourself that, and then you start to believe. So there's a bit of a juxtaposition there, because if you need to believe in order to get stuck into it, but it's only really after you get stuck into it that you start to believe that you're actually capable in doing something, right?
Yeah, so I have a belief that requires me to believe the following. I only do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. So I have a structured belief system that I have documented that are like, these are all the things that make the scaffolding of the way that my mind works. I think that beliefs and values are the thing that create your frame of reference, which is the matrix that you live inside of, plus biology. So biology, beliefs, and values, that is your matrix. Now, most people don't think that beliefs are a choice. Values, I think you can get most people to believe that those are a choice, but people think they believe what is objectively true. If you're reaching this part of the interview, having started at the beginning, you know that we don't know what is true. So beliefs are a choice. Beliefs, from where I'm coming from, you should want beliefs that are as close to what is true as possible. But I have found, given the wiring of the human brain, we are far more likely to believe something negative about us, our abilities, than we are to believe something positive. There's tons of literature out there. You can read all the studies you want about how true that is. Okay, well, if I know that I'm prone to believe something negative, then the odds are that my life is limited not by my talent and intelligence. It's instead limited by my beliefs. Okay, cool. So I need to put in a belief that counteracts that. And that belief is, I only do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. Now, remember, what I believe about the things that move you towards your goals are actions based on beliefs that are closer to ground truth. That's why they have predictive validity. So even though it makes it sound like I'm saying, I'll believe in whatever I want, I'm saying, I'm just trying to combat something that makes me more likely to believe a negative untruth. And since I don't know the things that I believe are true or not, except in as much as they allow me to predict the outcome of my actions, I'm like, I might as well believe the positive thing that gets me to take the action so I can find out whether it was true or not. Now, as I do that thing, I may have to update that belief, because believing that moved me away from my goal. Okay, cool. I'm not going to believe that thing anymore. I'm going to believe another thing. And the very first time this happened to me was back in the 90s. Believe it or not, people did not know if you could teach an old dog, quote unquote, new tricks. So I was like, well, I'm going to act as if brain plasticity is real, because when I don't, I start feeling depressed, and I don't want to be depressed. And when I start believing, even though I don't have the evidence to back it up, I start believing that no, I can get better, I feel expansive. Well, I'm like, I prefer to feel expansive. So even if both of these are dead ends, I'm going to follow the dead end that makes me feel better. So I started acting as if I could get better. And lo and behold, my actions followed that. And I started doing things to actually make myself better. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting a lot better at these things that matter. And my life and all of my success is a result of that.
Decision fatigue is one of those interesting things I've researched as well. And it turns out what they found is actually those that believe in decision fatigue experience decision fatigue. Those that don't believe in decision fatigue ain't got none. It's like,
here's the thing. They still have decision fatigue, but it is really separating the pain and the suffering, because until you can no longer make ATP and you legitimately die, you can keep making decisions. So for instance, I'm sick right now, but I can either come into this interview and be like, oh, I'm sick. Like when I couldn't remember where I was like, oh, this is what happens. Your brain really does slow down. And then I was like, dude, if you let that thought into your head, then all of a sudden you're going to start making bigger mistakes simply because you're acquiescing, even though it is true, even though you could measure the performance of my brain and you can literally see that, oh, yes, because you're fighting off an illness, resources being allocated elsewhere and you're not able to do things you would normally be able to do. But I'm not dead yet, so I can keep making decisions. So somebody that gives into decision fatigue just falls into that David Goggins zone of when you think that you have gone as far as you can go, you are broken, you couldn't possibly go another step, like you're just finished kaput. When you're at that point, you're only 40% of the way to literally your system's shutting down and you not being able to take another step at a biological level. This is where people have to understand the difference between psychic energy and literal ATP energy. So psychic energy, like the psychological sense of being broken, is real. And I can get you pumped up just by playing a song that you respond to. That's psychic energy. You didn't actually suddenly develop more energy. You just got excited, which is a real neurochemical state, and it feels better and it, gets you to move forward. But you can do grueling things just by putting one foot in front of another. And so it is both real that sucks and it's not fun and it in some ways takes more energy. But in another way, even when it was like I have decision fatigue and, this is really getting harder, that you could have gone on for a very, very, very long time before your systems legitimately shut down.
In the university, why is mindset so central to everything? So it seems like at the moment, what I'm gathering from this conversation in particular is we are plugged into a matrix. You've wanted to unplug people from the matrix for the longest while. And the conclusion that I'm sort of arriving to in this conversation is that you're going to be in a matrix of your mind. At least you get to build the matrix of your choosing. Am I picking up what you're putting down?
100%. And the reason that it's so central is there is no escaping that you live life through the human mind. So we're all stuck and you're just going to have to figure out how to deal with it well. I never thought that I would teach mindset. I set out to teach business. And then I just found that you would tell somebody what to do and they would be paralyzed. They'd be in the room with 1,000 doors and I don't know how to shut the doors. And so then you'd be like, okay, I guess I have to explain this. And so you'd explain that so that you could then explain, okay, now that you've shut the doors, now that you know what you're building your business around, now you're going to build your financial model. Oh, but numbers scare me. Okay, well, all of your actions are downstream of your beliefs and remember you can get better. And so just in trying to get people to do the things that they needed to do, I had to really spend a lot of time working with their mindset. Now, there is a reason that I teach a class exclusively for people that already have a functioning business. Because I'm like, this one isn't going to be much mindset. This is just going to be like the business stuff. Bro, even there, I spend an inordinate amount of my time okay, you're failing because this is a mindset problem. So I'm sure some of this is the type of person that I attract. And some of it is just, it is such a near... I don't think anybody escapes it. I think it is a universal reality that your mind, no matter who you are, is going to mess with you. And it is very difficult to be a human. And everybody's going to have to deal with mindset stuff, even though some mindset stuff is so cringe. But you just have to do it, man. The mind messes with you. It just is true.
I almost want to poke you into a cringe place and ask you questions around.
Go for it. Like I said, you can ask anything you want. Just remember, your audience may hate the answer. That's the only catch.
Well, I think the 101 places that I think, and this is many years ago when I was starting my podcast, but experiencing the power of gratitude and things like this were introduced to me through powerful podcasts such as your own. Now I think it's in the Zeitgeist 101. People, especially in our audience, is getting that. So I'm conscious of how much time we have, so I might not push us down that path. But one of the things I wanted to ask is the mindset piece, going back to that, being kind of central in your business as the owner, the occupier, the CEO, the COO, the role that you kind of play when you're front and center. Are you always the problem? Is it always the hard consciousness, the hard problem of consciousness? Is it always the leader that is the problem in so many ways?
Because the leader is always going to be the person that can solve the problem, you might as well take that responsibility. But the true answer, and we can go as hard and deep in building businesses as you want, The hard reality is if you really want to build a successful business, you've got to be surrounded by A players that have an absolutely high standard set by you as the CEO. You've got to fire people that are underperforming, even though your heart is going to scream that you don't want to do that, especially you. You want to see people grow and get better. It's a core part of your thesis as a human. But I will just tell you right now that a business cannot tolerate somebody who is developing on the wrong timescale. So this is just one of them hard realities. And so that person may just need to be ejected from your company for a while to go out, build other skills. Maybe they can come back. I've had that happen multiple times here. And that is just real. And I have just been beaten about the head, neck, and chest with that reality of if I do not relentlessly trim underperformers and replace them with A players that are already hitting the bar of standard and or exceeding it, that we stall out. And so that's really real. Everybody in their own life, if you want to contribute to a championship team, you've got to be hardcore.
But I think also vantage point question again, for someone that's starting out and building out something, they don't always have the opportunity to hire someone that's the A team.
No doubt. Now, let's talk about what you have to do. So, dear boys and girls, if you can hear my voice right now, there's no cosmic thing that says you're going to get to run a successful company. If you can't outperform other people and use your ability to outperform other people in something that matters, and therefore attract a talent that is desperate to work with somebody that can do what you can do, if you can't do that, you will fail. So the hard reality is business is for winners, baby. Like, you are in a competition. And if you are not able to play with the big boys, you will be relegated to the minor leagues. That is just the fact. And there's something about social media that makes everybody think that they're going to succeed at business. And the reality is that you're not. So most podcasts are going to get little to no listens. That's just the hard reality. And only people that can deliver more value end up scaling. The same thing as a CEO. If you can't do something that is truly unbelievable that makes other people want to be with you, you're not going to scale. You won't be able to get that high caliber talent. It is what it is. And you will lose to the people that attract the high caliber talent. It is what it is. And so this is why the one deranging thing about social media is people no longer spend the 20 years just getting good at something and then stepping in front of the camera. They just want to go right to being in front of the camera. Go spend 20 years becoming God tier at something and then step in front of the camera.
There's a common belief that your passion is actually what sets you apart from other people. Is that in your mind? And I think I've got this right because I've been following you for long enough. It doesn't really give you, it supports you on the path of skill acquisition because you've got more gumption in that zone than anybody else would normally have if you're most passionate about said task. But passion alone for something isn't quite enough, is it?
It's not even in the realm of enough. So passion is merely psychic energy. It's the thing that makes you enthusiastic enough to fight through all the boredom and to keep going. That's it. Like, you might be passionate to be a pilot, but if every time you take off, you crash, your pilot career is going to be very short-lived. And I don't care how passionate you are about flying. If you're not able to get people up and land them safely, no pilot for you. So this is the ultimate goal, is efficacy. That's it. You have to be good at a thing. You have to say, this thing that the world values, I can do that better than anybody else.
And when it comes to efficacy, the key thing in there for yourself I've found really interesting is you actually prioritize Lisa above, for those that don't have context, Lisa is Tom's wife. You prioritize Lisa above most of your business interactions and stuff, but then
everything. Nothing is higher. Not even my own life. Lisa is the pinnacle.
Yeah, so I'd love to get your insights on why. Well, actually, let's start there. Why? Yeah.
Because from a biological standpoint, people have got to understand that your entire life is controlled by how you feel in that space between your ears. And life has nothing, and I mean nothing, better to offer you than returned love. So to love someone and have them love you back is the highest. So knowing that, I did not want to be an idiot and put something above that would ultimately be lesser. Now, there are other amazing things in life, but that one is the top. And so all of us get to run an experiment with our lives. And many experiments. The most important experiment in my life is, what does it look like to share a life with somebody from, for us, my mid-20s, I was 24 when I met her, all the way through. God willing, we both die very, very old. What does that look like? And I want my life to answer that question. So I make sure that I keep that as my highest value. Now, it doesn't mean it's the thing that I give the most time to, but it does mean that there's a reason I founded my last 2 companies with my wife, because I'm very ambitious. I love expressing myself through the creation of businesses, but I want to do it with her. So she is certainly the one constant in my life. She doesn't think of business time as quality time. I do, but we build together. But if she ever says, hey, from a husband and wife perspective, this is too much, you're working too much, I need time, I'll drop whatever I'm doing and say, yeah, you never abuse that request. And she is the keeper, because she feels it before I do. She's the keeper of the safety and health of our relationship. And so, yeah, if she ever says, I need you to not do that thing, and yes, it will hurt our business, I'd do it in a second.
How do you separate out the points of contention? Because surely, like, when you're building things together, friction is actually kind of a healthy aspect of growing things, right? But when that's your life partner, how do you navigate something as treacherous as that?
Yeah, so it's very important that you guys have roles established ahead of time. So you know, okay, this is what you're responsible for. This is what I'm responsible for. You also need to map out abilities. So who's good at what, who has more credibility in a given area. And then you have to map out when we can't agree and we've both gotten to the point where we understand each other's positions, we can articulate it, and each of us will say to the other, you understand my position perfectly. And we still don't agree, which one of us will make the final decision. And if you have all of that laid out ahead of time, then you should be fine, as long as you can abide by that. So when Lisa and I started Impact Theory, I said, hey, there are 2 options before us. We can split the money that we're willing to lose launching a new company and say, you take X number of millions, you go start your company, I'll take X number of millions and go start my company, they'll be even. Or we can pull our resources and do this together. But just know that if we're doing this together, I am going to be the CEO. And so I will always do my best to convince you. I know you will do your best to convince me. I'm very open. I know where you're better than me. You know where I'm better than you. Well, navigating all that very well, very high level. We had just spent, almost a decade doing it together at Quest. So it was like we knew how each other are. So there was a lot of clarity there. And I said, but if we ever get to the point where we understand each other perfectly, but we can't agree, we'll go with my idea every time. And I'm like, if you're comfortable with that, then we can do this together. Otherwise, let's split the money and do our separate things. And I have no doubt that you will build something that's amazing. And she said, no, she would rather do it with me, that she agreed that I was the right person to be the CEO. And it just has been very, very easy from that perspective. So this is somebody that doesn't have ego around me making the final decision when it comes to that, which it very rarely does, because I'm so quick to acknowledge the areas that she's just better than me at. And when it's an area that she's better than me and she's like, this is what I think we should do, 99.999999 times out of 100, I'm just going to go, yeah, cool, totally. Like following you down a path in this area has yielded better outcomes than following me down this path. So it just makes sense. And when somebody feels respected and acknowledged for the things that they are good at and celebrated, it just really isn't that hard. It's only when people build their self-esteem around being right that you have a problem, or if each person is jealous of the other. So Lisa and I are set up for maximum jealousy because we both have shows. They're both interview shows. And so now it's like, okay, well, wait, what happens if I'm doing better than her? What happens if she's doing better than me? Like, is there any jealousy? Or here's one that comes up a lot. One of us is doing well at that moment and the other's doing poorly. And so now, how does the other person respond if they're the one that's losing in that given moment? How do they respond when the other person's doing well? Now, I'm a big believer that, dude, I would not respect myself if I weren't busting my ass to make her dreams come true, making her feel better about herself, celebrating her to high heaven when she's doing well, regardless of what's going on in my life. So that is very easy for the both of us. because I certainly don't think I'm a better person if I'm outperforming my wife. I'm competing against the marketplace. I'm not competing against my wife. And man, if we were ever in a position where she was number one and I was number two in the world, hey, I'm here for that. Like, I am not going to cry over being number two. As I tell Lisa, I said, money that we generate off of what you do spends just as well as money generated off what I do. So from that perspective, I could not care less. And you are the person that I love most in life. So it's like, I want to see you win. And because that is true, and because that is a part of my value system, then you just reinforce. It's like, I want the opportunity to celebrate her when things are not going well, for me to remind myself that that is the way that I ought to act as a moral valuation on myself. And then it just feels good, right? To support somebody else. So, and I don't build my self-esteem around being right or winning. I value my self-esteem around being willing to get better.
Having become a father of two recently, touch wood, it's so incredible in so many ways. And one of the biggest lessons I take away consistently is actually one of the biggest lessons and teachings for them is my relationship with my wife. It's like the thing that they're absorbing by osmosis all the time. We can talk about how much they're picking up, the delta wave state that they spend their time in up until the age of 7. Like, they're literally just hypnotic sponges, just picking up everything that's happening around them all the time. Now, the interesting thing there is I look at how much support relationship theory gives to such incredible people around the world, touch wood, and maybe I loaded that one up, but even myself included. But maybe just also people like me is probably the way to articulate that. But the interesting thing there is you guys chose no kids, wasn't on your cards, wasn't what you guys, what can you
was for a long
that?
time. Like, we always assumed we were going to have kids. And the only honest way to look at it is that I really want kids, like, still to this day, like, I really want kids. The only thing I want more than I want to have kids is to not have kids. So I get it, man. And I really think that the default answer most people should pursue meaning and purpose through having children. And I am not blind to the fact that when I'm 80, I will regret that I didn't have children. But I have such an easy relationship with regret. Everything is about perspective. And if I don't have an answer for when I'm 80, what do I do now with my life that I don't have children? I'll get eaten alive. But just as I've done at every point in my life, and if I'd had kids, then I would have come up with a reason why that was the greatest thing ever. And I would have made that be the most amazing thing, and it would have been incredible. And one thing that I invite people to understand about me is I big brothered for somebody for 8.5 years. So from the time they were 8 years old, like I have seen very much up close what it means to have that kind of relationship with somebody. And so I've also seen the messy reality of don't let parents fool you into thinking it's all sunshine and rainbows, right? This is quite literally the most difficult, high risk thing you could ever do, but it's also the most rewarding thing that you could ever do. So I feel like I have a very objective picture on the whole thing, that it's a trade-off, right? I think, I can't believe I'm blanking. Thomas Sowell. Would have hated blanking on that. Thomas Sowell has a really smart insight, which is there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs. So to be a parent, you make trade-offs. To not be a parent, you make trade-offs. And you just need to build a life that deals with the trade-offs that you've chosen. And if you've had kids, I think you've chosen very wisely. I think it's incredible. I owe you a debt of gratitude that you're having kids. I think the world needs more kids that are raised well. I really do thank parents for their service. I've decided not to do it. And it's a little bit like deciding not to go into the military. We need people to do it. We need people that stand guard for the future of humanity. And I'm not one of those people. And so fair enough, man. Like, I get why some people are frustrated that I've chosen not to have kids. I don't have any beef with that. At the end of the day, I'm going to live my life the way I think is best suited to me. But when people ask me like, hey, what life path should I walk down? My answer is always the same. Kids should be the default path. You should only deviate that if you've really thought through it, because there are evolutionary pressures that are going to play against you that only get more intense as you age. And if you have not consciously decided based on these factors and my personality and what I'm trying to do and how I want to structure my life, that I'm not having children, you will end up regretting it. So yeah, I think it's the default path, but not everybody's going to walk it. And I'm one of those people.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, brother. You said you've got an easy relationship with regret. Hearing you say that, I'm sure is like certain people like, mate, I'm designing my whole life around not regretting stuff. Can you unpack that a little bit just quickly?
No one's going to live a perfect life. Literally no one. And so I have tried so many things to find that thing that creates that sense of ease, and getting rich doesn't create that sense of ease. Being celebrated doesn't create that sense of ease. Millions of followers doesn't create that sense of ease. The only thing that creates that sense of ease is recognizing I am trapped inside of an evolutionarily created brain that runs an algorithm or a matrix that lies to me about what is real. And I need to develop a relationship where I am not beholden to the emotions that the wet works between my ears cough up. That instead, I orchestrate a sense of beliefs and values that allow me to mitigate the tremendous spikes up or down in these emotions. And so by doing that, by understanding that my emotions have an evolutionary agenda that does not match what I'm trying to do with my life, and so I need to be very cognizant of that, and that you can change any emotion from negative to positive by recontextualizing it. So the reality is that the relationship that I have with my wife is spectacular. And I once had a comment on YouTube, I thought it was really brilliant. And they said, Tom, you're living life on easy mode. You don't even have kids. And I was like, facts. Dude, my marriage is so rad because I chose not to have kids. So I have decided that I want to make my life about my marriage, which is why it's my highest value and all that. So my trade-off is that I'm living romance on easy mode. And so it's awesome.
Well, I'm sure there's other things you're doing on hard mode.
For sure. Well, so one of them is meaning and purpose, right? So if you have kids, you're living meaning and purpose on easy mode. Like it is default, man. You could die, literally your kid's 6 months old, you get terminal cancer, devastating, but you have the sense that something is living beyond you, something that will care that you ever existed, something that will want to know about you, and you'll record videos and somebody will watch them. I know that all the videos that I record, they will wash away long before I die. I remind myself as I make these videos, I'm 3 weeks away from total anonymity. If I stop making videos, turned off my YouTube channel, dude, literally 3 weeks from now, people will be like, oh man, I recognize that guy, but I don't know from where. 3 years from now, no one will have any sense that I ever did anything. I mean, that just is the reality. So now I've got a much harder job of making sure that I feel a deep sense of meaning and purpose while I'm alive. So there's no solutions. There's only trade-offs. We are a hungry species. We are a hungry species. There is no action you can take that will make you not want more, right? So even parents that have kids still have that cloying sense of I want to do more, I want to be more, all of that. That's a high risk thing, that you've leaned into this sense that life could be more. That's the curse. That's not the blessing. The curse is always wanting to do more and be more and to have more, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical. That's the trap. The thing you should be looking for is being able to sit in this and be like, this is enough. I don't have kids and that's enough. I don't have love in my life the way Tom describes it, and that's enough. I'm here. I exist. I am letting go of want. I'm letting go of wanting there to be something better. And yet I want to flex that muscle. How far can I go? How much can I push forward? But do it in a way that's exciting and uplifting. And yeah, if I don't achieve it, that's okay. I just want to see, what does it look like to pursue? What does it look like to accept? I'm a hungry species. I can't eat a meal so filling that I never want to eat again. I can't have sex so wonderful that I never want to have sex again. I can't love so deeply I never want to love again. I can't achieve something so grand I never want to achieve again. Oh, that is how this matrix in my mind works. Got it. So if I know there's no having, not children, not money, not achievement, there's no having that will ever fill this hole in my soul. The only thing that fills it is pursuit. Oh, cool. Then I'm going to get a healthy relationship with pursuit. And that's how I have a healthy relationship with regret, because there is no achievement that I can have that will make that go away. And so when I'm 80 and I get hit with, bro, you didn't have kids, nothing is going to live beyond you, I'm going to go, but man, I really played all out. I really made the most of my life. I loved deeply, and I tried to make people's lives better. I pushed my own skill set as far as I could. And dude, were there any days where I was like, today just sucked? Yeah, there were days where I thought that, but it was only because I wasn't going after something I really cared about, or I let my frame of reference get off base and I was living for the accomplishment instead of the pursuit. I didn't honor my wife and my relationship. But when I look back and I take it in totality, it's like, yeah, I really went for it. I was cognizant about the trade-offs I was making, and I went for it. And I'm telling you right now, I'm pushing 50, man. So I've already got glimpses of what the things are that are going to come for me in terms of, did I make good on the promises I made myself as a kid? And, have I become the person that I want to be? Spoiler alert, absolutely not yet. And so it's possible that I never do. And knowing that it wouldn't matter even if I did, because none of that would satiate my desire to keep pursuing. And so I just come back to, hey, did you show up today and play to win? And you define win. But did you actually play to win by your own definitions? If yes, good day. If no, no matter how many kids you have, bad day.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. There's a subtle nuance in here that I'd like to stretch open, because the key thing you're describing there is the pursuit. And even for, I don't want to say the layperson, but the layperson tuning in, the pursuit still in their mind is attached to outcome. And what I've had to learn on this journey, and I'm, still early days, in terms of even just creating content, doing the things that I enjoy doing in life and being able to share and, support people on their path forward, is when you pin yourself to outcomes, it is the most treacherous place for your mental health to ever be, right? As opposed to, and every time I find myself kind of going, oh, like something's wrong, and it's like, what's really wrong? And it's like, oh, nothing's actually wrong. It's just my expectations. I've pinned myself to an outcome. And the minute I bring myself just back to, hey, just have a conversation, right? Like just literally just bring yourself back to the process. My mind just slips back into, oh yeah, there's that thing that energizes me again. There's that thing that I'm in my flow. And I'm just conscious hearing you speak about pursuit. many people listening in, you've been very good at managing like how you've articulated it. It's been very clean. But I think just even it gets lost in translation, because when people talk about pursuit, automatically people start thinking about outcomes rather than the process.
Oh, yes. This is why step number 1, what you build your self-esteem around matters. Build your self-esteem around something that is anti-fragile. The only anti-fragile thing I have discovered is to be the learner. So if in life you are trying to learn and get better, it's still an outcome in the sense that you could say, did I get better today? Yes or no. But ultimately, the thing you're trying to reward yourself for is the pursuit. It's actually pretty simple to do, but most people will end up in the accomplishment trap. And they will say, I'm only worthy if I achieve XYZ, versus I am going to reward myself almost exclusively for my pursuit. And this is why I check in with myself about every 3 hours. And I say, have I made the most of the last 3 hours? If yes, cool, keep doing it. If no, then okay, adjust. And it's just, you just live in that loop. But my self-esteem is built around my willingness to stare nakedly at my inadequacies, so I understand what I have to get better at to actually pursue my goals. But I do feel like I'm on a ticking clock, that I know that human cognition decays with age. And so there is going to become a point where now it's diminishing returns, that even the additional wisdom that I have added is not able to combat the cognitive decline. And that is the next thing I have to figure out how I'm going to deal with, because right now all of my anxieties dissipate in the face of potential. So I'm like, well, I haven't done that yet, but there will come a day where I'm like, yet's never going to come. If I was going to be able to pull this off, I would have pulled this off a decade or 2 decades ago, when I still had the cognition, the energy, the connections, all that stuff. So I'll need to find that new frame of reference that allows me to live in joy in that moment, because it's the only thing that makes sense. So that is why I keep monk-style detachment in my back pocket, because I know there will come a day where I'm not able to derive the sense of well-being from switching from accomplishment to pursuit, because even the pursuit itself will be so diminished that it's going to be something different. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I'm completely fearless in the face of knowing, as one's physical reality changes, you have to adapt your mental frame of reference around what you're going to value yourself for, what you're going to pursue, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, valuing yourself. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because so far in the conversation, you've been very cognizant of also the way you've described beliefs also being hardwired into biology as well, and like the practical aspect of it. And I think it's just shining in this moment once again. Is like someone will just be like, absolutely, you can just believe that you're going to age without cognitive decline. Surely that's a belief that you can install. And this goes back to, yeah, absolutely, but you got to be grounded as well in terms of the, like what is hardline reality as well. One of the thing that plagues you, which also was a real maturation moment for me in my life, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit that it only really sunk in about 3-4 years ago for me, was that you absolutely can have anything. Like really, you can have anything, but you can't actually have everything. And I feel like that was the day that emotionally, and I think it sort of coincided for me when I had kids, like I just feel like I spiritually graduated that day when I realized just the drinking of the fire hose that is desire. Like it just torrents at you. And then trying to learn to surf it is just like, all right, I can probably just pick these 2 or 3 sort of threads that I can surf. I know this is something that you've contemplated quite a bit as well. I'd love to just hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, that was hugely transformative for me as well. You really do have to narrow your focus. So an analogy that I'll use for people is, right now, the amount of energy being released from the sun is unbelievably massive. It would power the earth. It's thousands of times over, maybe millions of times. because think about how little of the sun's energy actually falls on planet Earth. I mean, it's ridiculously small. It's some tiny fraction of a tiny fraction actually hits Earth. First of all, it's radiating energy in every possible direction, and only that narrow band in that narrow direction actually falls on Earth. But even with that, the amount of energy falling on planet Earth would power us, well over. But yet you can go lay out in the sun and you get a tan. Maybe you even get your skin burned if you lay out long enough. But the reality is you can walk around in the sun and there's no problem. But if you take a magnifying glass and you now harness the energy from that tiny fraction of the sun's energy that's falling right into that spot, you can literally light things on fire. Now, the difference isn't the amount of energy falling on that space. The difference is the amount of energy that you have focused into one tiny point. Every human is like that. You are the sun. You are generating all this energy. You have all this incredible potential. But if you don't focus it, then you get warmth maybe. And maybe it's people love being around you, and maybe you've done some cool things. But when you compare it to what it would be if you focused it on one thing, you'd get a more decisive external output. Now, it may not change in a positive way how you feel internally, and so you need to be cognizant of that. But my thing is just trying to get people not to lie to themselves, to build up a predictive engine. So I know, hey, I'm doing these 3 things. And because I'm diffusing my energy across 3 things, those 3 things are not doing as well as they could be. But it fills me up in a, how do I want to feel from a day-to-day perspective? And it reminds me that I've got another go-to thing. If I ever get frustrated that I'm not advancing fast enough, I can pick one and kill the other 2, or I can pick 2 and kill 1, whatever. But that opportunity is there for me if I ever want to do it. Or there's even another one to bring in operators for those units so that it resides under me, but I'm not building those things out in the way that Elon Musk is not the CEO of X, right? So there's somebody else doing that. So I am always trying to think from first principles. And to think from first principles means you're not thinking from analogy. You're not letting other people hand you a frame of reference, which is inherently limiting. You are literally building up from physics. And you're saying, these are the things that I know to be true about the world. So I'll often start my thought process from the physics of the human mind. So the brain works in a very predictable way. And so I know certain things are going to have me reacting in different ways. And because I know that, I can plan for it. I can account for that in my decision making. And so that makes things a lot easier. So to your earlier point, I get that 50% of me is hardwired. I'm not going to be able to change it. So there's certain things I'm just not going to try to fight against. But I also know that 50% of me is malleable. And so I'm not going to leave that opportunity on the table. I want to make use of the 50% that's malleable. I don't want to fight against the 50% that's not. And, to use the Lord's Prayer, God grant me the ability to know the difference. That's always the catch. But that ultimately is how I navigate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want to double click on something we talked about earlier, which is it's about ambition and enlightenment. And it's interesting because when even Lisa's priority number 1, but you have humbly requested her to never sort of, hey, can we just let me stick with this ambition thing for a minute, because I think I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think the quote was, I don't know who I am without it, to be honest. And so the interesting thing there is you also, in a similar vein in the podcast today, was, trying to find yourself to just coach yourself that all the little things are enough, that consistent detachment to the best of your ability is the safe zone almost to land yourself in. And for me, I've had to sit with this, and it seems like, again, a conundrum, because it's almost trying to pursue, hey, just being enough in the moment. Then also it's my ambition that's running after it, to like, hey, ambitiously, can I try and find myself to be enough in the moment? And it's like, bro, that exact thing that you're trying to light the log with is exactly what's burnt. Like, do you get the sort of paradox? It's like trying to, yeah.
Very much. Here's where people need to separate utility from the trap. So if you're going to leverage that you are a wanting, covetous, ambitious creature, then it's like, okay, you're probably not going to be able to get rid of that, but you can point it at something. So I want and I covet and I am ambitious for mental peace. Okay, cool. I'm going to leverage, goes back to that 50-50. I'm going to leverage the hardwired part. I am going to be ambitious. I am going to seek to pursue something with everything that I have, but I'm going to point that, the part that I can control, at something that makes me feel the way that I want to feel. And getting people to understand just one simple idea that ultimately life is about neurochemical states and how you feel when you're in them. And all the weird things that we do in life, from falling in love to building businesses to doing drugs to watching a comedy, is all about manipulating our brain chemistry. And we love to manipulate our brain chemistry. Dogs love it. They'll walk up to you and ask to be pet. Why? Because it causes them to release certain neurochemicals that they find pleasurable. So all animals do it. And okay, well, if that's the game, then I'm going to point that my covetous nature towards like relentlessly wanting peace of mind, or I want to find peace of mind while helping other people. Cool. Hey, great. And so now you're going after that with like super dedication. I have a hunch that monks are actually the most ambitious among us, the most dedicated, the most fiendish, because to really pursue enlightenment is like the most gangster hardcore pursuit ever. Like it's for real brutal. And so you've got to like have all that drive. So to get to that place where you are suddenly actually able to detach, it took all that drive and all that discipline. And so you made a reference earlier, something like the universe wants to see itself or experience itself. It's like there's something fascinating about using that thing that is in and of itself the trap to escape the trap, right? The obstacle becomes the way. It's fascinating, but it's real.
Tom, I was going to round out today's podcast by asking you about the impact and whether the impact that you set out to have on impact theory quite poetically turned out to be the impact that you've had. But I feel almost foolish asking that question because obviously we've tried to unpick ourselves from outcomes and surrender to the process. So as we start to venture ourselves towards the end,
let me jump in really fast.
Yeah.
I am not trying to surrender myself to the process. What I'm trying to do, and this I think is the conundrum everybody has to deal with. I am trying to sincerely accomplish the thing without allowing myself to value myself for whether I actually do it or not. So it's a very subtle thing that I think makes a world of difference. So I value myself for what I call the sincere pursuit. So when I say sincere pursuit, I mean, I really did the things necessary to win a championship. I didn't pretend, I didn't phone it in, I didn't show up to collect a trophy. I came to win the championship. That's it, to put in that kind of level of performance. Now, I may not be able to do it. I may fall short on the 50% that's hardwired. I may just not be good enough yet and I need to keep trying. But did I do everything in my power to get good enough to win? And if I did, then it's a victory and I feel good about that and I feel good about myself and I'm very proud of myself and I have my own respect, all of that. Now, I may or may not win the championship ever. Cool. That is what it is. That I may not be able to control, but I control whether I sincerely pursue it. And those are the kind of people I want to be around. People that understand you better show up playing to win, pushing yourself to get better, to really actually believing you can accomplish this thing and doing the things necessary to make it happen. But then when it doesn't happen, that you're not over in the corner crying and inconsolable. You're just going, cool, what do I have to do better next time? And man, that was a lot of fun.
I love that. Thank you for ironing out because the nuances like that, they make all the difference in terms of how you show up in the ways of what you're showing up for. I was going to ask you the question, if you could ask humanity one question to provoke the deepest self-reflection possible for them, what would it be and why?
Do you want it in the form of a Zen koan, or do you want it in like, okay, really go off and answer this question?
I would love the Tom Bilyeu, give it to us.
Okay, so I want people to understand one very simple idea. It is the epitaph that I want on my tombstone. Put as a question, it would be, do you understand that your entire life is controlled by your biology? Because if I can get people to understand that their entire life is controlled by their biology, then they'll go down the right path of asking the right questions. So what are the parts of you that are hardwired, and how do they manifest in your life? Yes, they manifest in terms of your ability to produce ATP. Cool, that's one of them. They manifest in ways like the way my memory works. Things don't get implanted in my mind very strongly. And so what ends up happening is the only things that survive that I remember are things that withstand the test of time that I use all the time. And so the trade-off is that I can have an argument with my wife and have really done something that is just unjust to her, hurt her feelings, and I'm not going to remember it in a month, let alone a year, let alone in 10 years. So I have no scar tissue over it, not traumatized by the conversation. She may have done something that was unjust to me, hurt my feelings, etc. Not only will I not remember it, I won't have any scar tissue over it. It just goes away. And so my wife, on the other hand, will carry that. Now, the good news is that she'll actually remember these things. And so there are things that I wish I could hold on, people I wish I had a stronger memory of, people that I, built a connection with, and I don't even remember meeting them now. And that would really help build my professional network, things like that. It'd be very, very advantageous. I would have much stronger friendships. So that's the trade-off. I didn't earn the right to not have traumas follow me, because I've been through traumatic things. They just don't plant themselves in my mind very strongly. And so my wife will say, I wish I had your memory. And I'm always like, I don't know if you do, but it's a trade-off, right? So there's pluses and minuses on both sides. So I have to structure my life around that biological reality. Now, again, I didn't earn it. It is hardwired. There are memory tricks that you can do, but that doesn't address the fundamental reality that in the way that things just stick in my wife's mind, they just don't stick in mine. And so, okay, cool. That's how I'm set up. So now how do I learn? How do I build a professional network? How do I make sure that I have friendships? Like, how do I combat that? Microbiome influences your mood massively. And so, little microbes in my gut influence my levels of depression? Like what? My anxiety, profoundly influenced by things that I eat. And so mastering that, getting sleep, how much that matters, beliefs, how much things are downstream of that. So when I attack things from the perspective of there are evolutionarily placed algorithms running in my brain that determine how I feel about myself, well, I better understand, what does evolution want? What did it optimize for? And so all of that stuff becomes just incredibly important and has made navigating my life so much easier. Like the fact that millions of people have listened to my advice around mindset, I'm like, all I'm doing is trying to map out the biological reality of the human existence. That's it. And you can predict everything that I say based on, if you're as close to ground truth about the way the human mind works as I am, you'll be able to predict every word out of my mouth. If you're farther ahead than me, you'll be able to say more and better things. And if you're farther behind than me, you'll be able to say less useful things, because all I'm doing is mapping the biological reality of the human mind, body experience. That's it. And it's valuable to people in as much as it gets close to building a predictive engine. That's it. And so getting everybody in that loop is like everything. And I find no matter how aggressively I scream it, you can revisit somebody a year later and they're still acting as if they're having a spiritual experience and not a biological experience. And that makes me very sad, because you will never understand spirituality until you understand biology.
Tom. Brother, I thank you so much for your time, carving out the time to be here today, sharing yourself so abundantly with us. And it'd be very remiss of me to not acknowledge that in many ways, I don't think the Inspired Evolution podcast would exist the way that it does. It's different to your show, but nonetheless, it's inspirations, lights, you coalescing your truth to, certain points that leaves a wake behind for individuals like myself to find their way forward as well. So, brother, yes, thank you for today's conversation wholeheartedly. But honestly, thank you so much for you, who you are, what you do, the way you do it, the way you relentlessly have been showing up for the pursuit, for helping people with the truth going forward and embracing it. You know, such deep concepts. I would say religiously, even though I know that word might carry some baggage. But yeah, thank you so much, brother, for you. Really, really, really appreciate you. Thank you for doing this with us here today.
Oh, man, truly a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and very honored to have played some small role in what you're doing. That's awesome. I love it.
You inspired soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible episode. Thank you so much for your inspirations to evolve. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. To all of you that have subscribed, once again, thank you so much for everything. All you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel, as I like to say, and episodes like this are consistently just, fueled by your love and support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment, hit subscribe, hit that bell notification icon just below. The button is below. It's lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution as I say the word subscribe. And it continues to help us champion love, positivity, wisdom, and these sorts of conversation that you've enjoyed today around the world for everybody to enjoy. Now on screen now, more episodes for you to dive in deeper, to continue your inspirations to evolve even deeper, onwards, upwards, and inwards. So go on, take your pick and make your click, and I'll see you in the next one.